Stock markets are higher today. China making a promise on a key sticking point for the U.S. in any trade deal, IP theft. Beijing says it will ramp up punishment of it. That's one step forward, but will Washington support of protesters in Hong Kong as pro-democracy parties sweep elections there? Be one step back. Let's bring in Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center Senior Research Fellow, Dean Cheng. Dean, good morning.
Good morning.
Glad to have you this morning. Can the U.S. support these pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong and get a trade deal with China? Can we do both?
I think there's no reason we can't do both. The interesting question is going to be how the Chinese react not only to the issue of Hong Kong, for example, and American support for Hong Kong protesters, but also arms sales to Taiwan, American support for human rights in Xinjiang, the whole range of various friction points between the U.S. and China.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to pull up a full screen of the results so far from the elections overnight, the district council elections in Hong Kong. Dean, 452 seats were up for grabs. The pro-democracy groups won 347 of them. Pro-government, that's pro-establishment, won just 60. How does Beijing respond to this? Do they work with these new elected officials to give the protesters what they want? What happens?
Well, let's keep in mind, first off, these are very low-level positions. So in and of themselves, this is not really going to change the power structure, at least not until you have the legislative elections. I believe those are due in 2020. What this has sent, however, is a clear message, a lack of confidence in Carrie Lam and an overall rebuke to Beijing. Beijing's easiest thing is to simply say, hey, we have nothing to do with this. Carrie Lam, over to you. But if she is forced to step down, Beijing has already made clear they will have a say in whoever succeeds her. And that's going to be a key sticking point.
Do you think she's forced to step down?
She might. She's certainly going to have to change direction. She's the one who opened up this whole can of worms with the extradition bill and then reinforced it by trying to ban masks in a city where facial recognition software is everywhere.
Do you think the news out of Beijing this morning that they'll make concessions and work with what the U.S. wants when it comes to intellectual property theft, that is a red meat issue for the U.S., do you think that's a positive sign that not only do we get a phase one, but a phase two might be forming?
I have to admit, I'm very pessimistic. Okay. China's made lots of promises about intellectual property. But let's keep in mind, a lot of the cyber theft is being done by the Chinese military or the Chinese government. So it's not a bunch of hackers in somebody's basement. It's the Chinese government itself that's doing it. So how credible are these promises going to be?
Dean Cheng, thank you for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.